Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in to listen to this presentation. Today I'm going to be talking about the teetotaler's nightmare and the consumer's dream, liquor privatization in Utah. To give you a heads up about where we will be going over the next 10 minutes, here's the following overview. The first 5 minutes I'll be bringing up some terms, some local history, a few studies on how states implement alcohol policy, how Utah's policy as an ABC state inhibits political and economic freedom. Then we will finish off with some sly critiques of Utah's free market ideology and why privatization is a sensible solution economically and morally. Now, in the past minute, I've used two terms you may not be familiar with, which are the first two terms on the slide, teetotaler and ABC state. A teetotaler is someone who abstains from drinking any and all alcohol. An ABC state is an alcohol beverage control state, which basically means that the state is a monopoly and controls all sale of liquor. And then much of my ideology of this presentation is of economist Milton Friedman's ideology of competitive capitalism, meaning that a free market capitalist system is an essential condition for political and economic freedom. So, a quick shot of history for you, pun intended. Utah outlawed all alcohol with the rest of the United States in 1919, then reversed that decision 14 years later. 2 years after that, Utah made the decision to become an ABC state and retain total control of all liquor sales along with 16 other states as well. Now, not a lot happened between 1935 and 2019, which is why when Utah raised the beer ABV to 5% or 4% by volume, everyone was quite ecstatic. However, don't be fooled, this decision was only made because the major beer brewers said they would not continue to sell to Utah since they had to dilute their beer to be able to sell in private outlets like grocery stores. Utah has also had some interesting hiccups in the road to the alcohol industry, listed on the right, where to buy liquor you used to have to pay an annual membership fee to visit any liquor store. And Utah only changed this law because France complained about the harsh restrictions just prior to the 2002 Olympics being held here. Flash forward to now, we are still an ABC state. We have a 0.05% driving limit, which amounts to less than a single drink of alcohol. And we are the only state who still retains full control of all beer and wine sales as well. Keeping the history in mind, I decided to look up some alcohol policies around the world to find out if alcohol is an elastic or inelastic good, and how pricing policies actually affect consumption. The two studies I primarily used were meta-analyses and found that some alcohols are elastic, meaning that consumers will purchase depending on the price and are sensitive to price changes, like liquors, and some aren't, like beers, meaning essentially anybody will pay for beer no matter the price. Also, teens are the group who are the most immune to price changes, which should surprise no one. Essentially, no one can really agree on whether alcohol consumers are price sensitive on a holistic scale. So, the best option for governments is to tax alcohol to gain revenue and leave the rest up to the consumers because no policy truly curbs consumption. In a nutshell, when there is a monopoly, consumers do not have economic freedom because competition does not push price towards an equilibrium and they have no alternatives of exchange. Furthermore, monopolies violate political freedom because the government can control price and production based on what they think the consumer ought to want instead of what they actually want. Now, people can and do go out of state for their alcohol because Utah's is basically flavored water, but that does not curb consumption, and it further takes money out of the state, which is a double whammy for the teetotaler argument. Also, Utah has touted free market values for years, and our own governor said that it is the one thing that makes this country great. Well, that's all fine and good, but it seems to not apply to the liquor industry. If Utah truly wants to curb consumption as it claims and not look like hypocrites, then we must privatize liquor stores. So, before I tell you all why we should privatize liquor stores, to prevent sounding like an alcohol-crazed Gen Zer, let's look at some figures. The picture on the right is how Utah distributes the funds of alcohol revenue currently. mostly going into the general fund and the school lunch program. So from the numbers themselves, only about 5 million out of 479 million goes towards drinking preventative programs. Most of it goes towards the general funds which pay off roads and whatnot. So clearly, curbing consumption is not a priority according to where the funding goes. The financial statement on the left is a lot of numbers, but I want you all to look at the final column, which is the compounded annual growth rate for alcohol sales. All the numbers are positive, meaning alcohol sales continue to grow year after year despite efforts to curb consumption. Also note that the financial numbers are in thousands. Next, you may be thinking, but Jaedri, privatizing liquor will drive up prices for consumers. Not so. When Washington State privatized in 2012, the average price per drink only went up by about $2, as seen in the picture on the right, because competition drove prices to an equilibrium level. Granted, producers had to pay more fees and taxes, but Washington still finished 2012, the year the privatization happened, with more than $50 million extra dollars in revenue, from foregoing the cost of the state running the stores alone. Utah should be doing the same. We have the third lowest excessive drinking habit in the nation, we have preventative laws in place, and we have very little costs associated with alcohol. There is no substantial reason to continue the state-run monopoly. Now, what would privatization mean for Utah? We can look at Washington State, who voted to privatize their liquor stores in 2012. The number of stores went from 300 in Washington, close to 1,500 now. Granted, Washington State also has the highest tax rates on alcohol in the entire country, nearly triple the rate of California, which is the next highest. Those taxes go towards the government and are distributed as they please. The majority of Utah's alcohol revenue goes towards school alcohol preventative programs, so more taxes would mean more education, and maybe even curb consumption. Also, liquor currently can't be delivered directly to those even with licenses, like restaurants. Instead, the liquor is delivered directly to the state of Utah and kept in a warehouse, which is a massive transportation sunk cost. Finally, Utah needs to acknowledge that their progressive base is growing within the state, and the laws should reflect that. Instead of erecting 7-foot-tall walls like the Zion's Curtain to prevent children from seeing drinks be poured, we should be educating them and leaving the ethical dilemma of purchasing liquor up to the consumers. Thank you.